Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are on page 339, Brahman, Purusha, Ishvara, the last paragraph, beginning with an absolute, eternal, and infinite self-existence. We have read the passage, and now you'll discuss it.
Well, Sri Aurobindo texts are very difficult to understand, and particularly if after a gap of 1 week, then we lose the thread. So, very briefly to remind you that the chapter is Brahman, Purusha, Ishvara, Maya, Prakriti, Shakti. In other words, what actually it means is that when you rise in consciousness to the spiritual planes of consciousness, you are not going to experience the divine. Everybody will experience in the same way. They will not. It depends on their individual nature. It depends on which plane of consciousness they are located. So everybody will have a different opinion. That is the reason why there are so many philosophies. Each one. But the thing is that when you have this spiritual experience, it is so convincing to you that it feels as though it is final. This is the problem. And so Sri Aurobindo was one who said, I will not take this as final, I will wait. And then as he rose in consciousness, he saw that all the philosophies are valid at their own plane of consciousness. So, he is a synthesis. All are right, all are partially wrong, all are right at their own level. So, Brahman, Purusha, Ishvara, Maya, Prakriti, Shakti. The first experience when you make your mind silent, or by other means, your consciousness rises out of the body-mind life and goes to the spiritual planes of consciousness. Normally, you experience the consciousness in which you are is seen as something infinite, eternal, absolute, featureless, immobile. These are the characteristics. But apart from this, you can't describe it in any other way because it seems to be an absolute. It is one and it is absolutely featureless. But it is absolutely real. It is so real that in comparison, the world seems to be unreal. This is usually the aspect. So, this is what you call the Brahman consciousness. The consciousness of the Sat, the consciousness of the Atman, okay, your soul. And when you experience that, usually you see the physical world as unreal. It is possible to see the physical world as real also if you rise to the level of the higher mind and experience a cosmic consciousness. That also is possible. But usually this is the experience that happens. You make your mind silent, consciousness rises out, and you experience the Brahman consciousness. So when you are in the Brahman consciousness, the world is an illusion. It doesn't seem to be real at all. It's empty forms without content. Okay? Only a silhouette. That's what it seems to be. Then when you rise a little higher, you experience the Purusha consciousness. The Brahman consciousness is impersonal. You have an experience of vast peace, vast calm, okay, and vast freedom and liberation. You are not in the body-mind life anymore. You are absolutely free. And it's impersonal. There is nobody there to whom you can talk or you can have an exchange. That can happen at the personal level, but not at the Brahman level. And then when you go to the higher level of consciousness, slightly higher, you change your stance as you go up, even higher than that, then you experience the Purusha. The Purusha is the personal aspect of the divine. And when you go there, the world does not seem to be any more illusion, but it seems to be mechanical unconscious force. So, Brahman corresponds to illusion of the world, then the Purusha consciousness corresponds to the mechanical unconscious energy of the world. The river is flowing, the sunlight is coming, the wind is blowing, no person, nothing, impersonal, mechanical, unconscious force. It is really not unconscious, but that's the experience you have. Then you rise even higher you come to the Ishvara consciousness. In the first experience of Brahman, impersonal. In the next experience of the personal, the Purusha. Now in the third one, which is called the Ishvara consciousness or the master of existence. He is personal as well as impersonal. And that form, that energy, which seemed to be at the first level illusion, at the second level which seemed to be mechanical force, now becomes your own force, fully conscious force. So these are the three stages, and that's what he's discussing, to put you in the right frame.
Now I have a question.
Yeah.
At what stage was the Buddha?
Once is?
What stage did the Buddha reach?
Oh.
You
He
see,
may have reached a very high stage of consciousness, much more than but we don't know. But he was concerned only with one problem, and that is the suffering in the world. So, if you rise to the lowest of the spiritual planes, but the highest of the material planes, at the higher mind level, you are free. Your consciousness has dissociated yourself from your body-mind life, and you are free of pain. You are in peace and calm. So that's a solution that Buddha was interested in.
and Ramakrishna? Ramakrishna?
Oh, yeah. See, these are very difficult for us to say. But from their descriptions, they speak of very common things which are there all over. It's only Sri Aurobindo who maps out and clearly gives specifics to each level of consciousness. The others speak in very general terms. But surely he would have gone to a very high level of consciousness, but he did not speak of the reaching the highest. He did not speak about it. But we should be clear about one thing, that even in the lower planes of consciousness, a glimpse of the higher planes of consciousness is possible. So it's very difficult for someone to say at what stage he was settled, established. You can have an experience, but are you established in that consciousness? That's the whole question.
Good. Very good, yes.
Okay? So,
Okay. So we'll continue now.
now we come to the para that we have to read today. We read it, but we'll go sentence by sentence. An absolute, eternal, and infinite self-existence, self-awareness, self-delight of being that secretly supports and pervades the universe, even while it is also beyond it, is then the first truth of spiritual experience. Okay? So, we'll look at this sentence. He is talking of something which is self-existence, self-awareness and self-delight. Obviously, he is speaking of Satchidananda. Self-existence is Sat. Self-awareness is Chit. Okay? And self-delight is Ananda. So, he is obviously speaking of Satchidananda. But note the word self-existence, self-awareness and self-delight. At our level, we can have the experience of consciousness. We can have the experience of delight. But it is not self-delight. It is not... This is... Our delight is usually originating from something. There is a cause and there is a time limit. After some time it vanishes. It has a beginning and an end. But this is eternal. It is... Nobody is causing that bliss to Brahman. Okay? He is causing it to himself. This self-awareness also, it means that it doesn't depend on anything. Okay? So, this is what he is saying. Self-existence. Self-existence is, by the way, he uses the word existence in the sense of substance which is subtlest. So, that is the Sat. Then, he uses the word substance for something which could be in between, and matter is the grossest of substance. So, this is the gradation of the substance itself. So, that's what he is pointing out. So, this is the, he is saying that the Satchidananda is creating the universe and supporting it and pervading it. Not only supporting it, but pervading it. And even while it is beyond, the Satchidananda is seated above, But it creates and enters into each thing that is creating. Okay, that's an important point we have to realize. To make it very clear, we can give a very gross example. Okay, a man fathers a child, okay, but he doesn't look after him. You do what you want. The divine is creating the world, but not telling it you do what you want. I don't bother. He is entering into it and guiding it. So it's like that. The child is being. The universe is the child of the divine. It's a creation of the divine. And he is entering into each thing, not only the universe, but he is saying and guiding it from behind. He is guiding it from the wings of the stage. Okay?
But is he not also evolving with it? Is he not also evolving with it?
Yes, because when he is supporting it, there are two things. There is the form itself and there is a supporting force behind. Just as in ourselves, we have a body, mind, life, but we also have the divine in ourselves, the psychic being. So that is trying to guide us toward the right action. But because it is covered up by the three veils of body, life and mind, it doesn't always manage to penetrate these veils and come to the front. So it is one of the important points in life when the psychic is able to come forward and guide you. So that's one of the central points and definitely an important stage in the evolution, spiritual evolution of man. Okay, so we go to the next sentence. But this truth of being has at once an impersonal and a personal aspect. So it can be impersonal, it can be personal, but separately. Normally you don't experience them together. Normally. It is only existence. It is not only existence, it is the one being, absolute, eternal and infinite. So, his only existence is impersonal. Okay? And personal aspect is one being. So, one being with a B cap is the personal aspect of the divine. Absolute, eternal and infinite. When we think of a personal aspect, we feel of a certain limitation because our mind thinks of a limitation. But this being in Satchidananda is a being. He is personal, but he is absolute, eternal and infinite. It's difficult for the mind to conceive of someone who can have a personal aspect and yet be impersonal. There are people who, nowadays the internet is full of cases of the near-death experience. So when they go out, they have the experience, let's say, of light. Okay? But this light is communicating with them. So the communicating is the personal aspect. Normally there is no communication. If it is impersonal, there is no communication. But they can have this experience. It is possible. Or sometimes a being comes and guides you. A being of light or a being of love. They come and guide you also.
This is an interesting point. Because in Savitri I have read that there are two beings on either side of man that guide him. Interesting.
Man means,
humanity.
General man. Okay.
Humans, yeah. Man, woman.
Right. So both the aspects are possible for the divine. But this truth of being has at once an impersonal and a personal aspect. But he is saying at once. Therefore, he is referring to the third level, the Ishvara level. They can be exclusive of each other, but when he is saying at once, simultaneously, okay, but this truth of being has at once an impersonal and personal aspect. It is not only existence, but it is the one being, absolute, eternal and infinite. As there are three fundamental aspects in which we meet this reality, and now he is telling you what those three realities are. Self, conscious being, spirit or God. Self is the Brahman consciousness, conscious being is the Chit, and spirit or God is the Ishvara. Okay? So, very clearly, he is telling you three things. One is the self. He put a comma. So self is the Brahman consciousness. Conscious being is the Chit or spirit. You can call it also spirit. And the third one, God, the divine being. That's the Ishvara consciousness. Or in the Gita you call it the Parabrahman, the Supreme. Paramatman also the word is used. There are many words they use there, but there may be small differences, but that is the one. So these are the three aspects. As there are three fundamental aspects in which we meet this reality, self-conscious being or spirit, the divine being, or to use the Indian terms, the absolute and omnipresent reality, Brahman, corresponding to self, manifests to us as Atman. Okay? So you use the word Atman for Brahman, and it's also equivalent to self. Then next is the Purusha, which is a conscious being. Okay? And the Ishvara, which is God or divine being. So these are the three aspects. Okay? So, or to use the Indian terms, we have said that. So too, its power of consciousness appears to us in three aspects. It is the self-force of that consciousness, conceptually creative of all things. So now he is talking of the corresponding of the physical world. When you rise in consciousness, you are in the higher level of consciousness. How are you seeing the lower? That's a power aspect. Chit and power. You are in the Chit consciousness. How are you seeing the power aspect of the physical world? So he is giving you that. Okay, so he's saying, so too, its power of consciousness appears to us in three aspects. It is self-force of that consciousness, conceptually creative of all things. Maya, okay? Brahman corresponds to Maya. It is Prakriti. When you have the Purusha experience, it is Prakriti, nature or force made dynamically executive, okay? Dynamically executive. It is, in other places he refers to it as mechanical unconscious force. Working out all things under the witnessing eye of the conscious being, the self or spirit. It is the conscious power of the divine being, Shakti. This is the third aspect. When you are in the Ishvara consciousness, it becomes your own Shakti, your own power. Okay? Conscious power of the divine being, Shakti, which is both conceptively creative and dynamically executive of all the divine workings. So, conceptively creating and dynamically executing. So, conceptively, man conceives first of something. No? So, you conceive of something and then you try to achieve that. So you can conceive, it's in the mind. Dynamically executive, physical concrete manifestation. That's what is meaning. I wonder if it's clear. Okay, so we'll have a look at it in another way. When the divine is creating the world, it is very similar to a poet creating his poem. This is Sri Aurobindo image, not mine. Okay. So, he says when a poet is about to create, first of all it's in his mind. That's a conceptive part. The divine mind, not our mind, the divine mind. And when he executes it and it becomes a material world, that is the dynamic aspect. You have the poem on paper. Now it's clear?
Yes. But still it occurs to me that Sri Aurobindo says all of these realizations, these experiences, the inventions and everything else are already out there in the world.
They are there, but they are not yet manifested. Because this conceptive power is infinite. But you can't produce, if you are producing them in time, it has to be sequential. So that's why some things have not yet been created and they will be created in time. So that's right. Infinite possibilities are there and they all get created. Very easy to understand. 400 years ago, there was no flight, okay, with heavier than air machines. 400 years ago, but it was conceived by Leonardo da Vinci. Now it has become a fact. Okay? So going to the moon was only an idea. Now it has become a fact. So conceptively and then dynamically. Executive of all the divine workings. These three aspects and their powers base and comprise the whole of existence and all nature, and taken together as a single whole, they reconcile the apparent disparateness and incompatibility of the supracosmic transcendence, the cosmic universality, and the separativeness of our individual existence. He is now giving you the three levels, and he is also using other words to express. There are basically three levels how the divine can manifest himself. Highest level, transcendent. The divine has not yet created the universe. He alone exists. This is a conceptual idea. Okay? There is a possible spiritual experience when you feel that you are in the divine consciousness with no creation at all. You are experiencing divine, as Srimda used the word, in himself. Not in the physical. The world doesn't exist for you. That's a transcendent experience. But you can experience the divine in the universe. That's a cosmic aspect. And man can also experience the divine within himself. The individual aspect. So these three correspond in a very rough manner to what he is saying here. Okay? We read that sentence again. These three aspects and their powers base and comprise the whole of existence and all nature. And taken together as a single whole, they reconcile the apparent disparateness and incompatibility of the supracosmic transcendence. The cosmic universe, supracosmic transcendence, the highest level. The cosmic universality, the second, the spiritual planes of consciousness. And the separativeness of our individual existence, the individual here. Okay? So, an absolute, cosmic, the absolute cosmic nature and ourselves are linked in oneness by this triune aspect of the one reality. So the transcendent, the cosmic and the individual are also linked, and they are a triune aspect. The word triune is interesting. It is three in one. It's not triple. It is three in one. Like biune means two in one. You can't separate them. They seem to have two aspects, but they are the same thing. Okay, so that's what he's saying. So there is the absolute, that's the highest level. He's using different words. So we have to equate absolute with transcendence. Outside the universe, at the highest level. Then there is the cosmic nature, okay? And ourselves, the individual, are linked in oneness by this triune aspect of the one reality. Okay? They are all actually one, but you experience them separately. The one who experiences the divine in himself may not see the divine in the universe. He may not see the divine in the transcendent aspect. So he feels that that's the ultimate truth. That's the whole problem. And the Mayavadin who experiences the transcendent consciousness thinks that that's the only truth. It is so convincing, that's why. He says that in the synthesis very clearly. Okay, so an absolute and ourselves are linked by this triune aspect of the one reality. For, taken by itself, the existence of the Absolute, the Supreme Brahman, would be a contradiction of the relative universe, and our own real existence would be incompatible with its sole, incommunicable reality. Okay. Another example, again a crude example, but it will explain this. The three states of water. Okay. You have ice, which is solid, corresponding to the physical world. Very solid, tangible, okay, touchable, okay. You can mold it. Then you have the water. The same thing is becoming water, okay. That's the middle world. And finally you have the water vapor. So if someone who doesn't know that these three are the same thing, you will see them as totally different. That is a gas, this is liquid, and this is solid. But actually they are the same thing. So the transcendent, the cosmic and the individual are really the same thing in essence, only taking different forms. Okay? So, for taken by itself, the existence of the Absolute, the Supreme Brahman, would be a contradiction of the relative universe. Why is he saying this? Because it's possible to experience the transcendent and the physical world disappears. It doesn't disappear, but you see it as an illusion. So you feel it's unreal. So it's a contradiction. So if they're saying, no, you have to take all the three into account. Simply saying that the transcendent is the only reality, like the Mayavadan is saying, is not valid. You have to take this also. The materialist is saying that matter is the only reality. Not true. Yes, you're saying something.
Or else it's a contradiction of the relative universe.
That's right. That is real, this is unreal. And there are many other contradictions. That is one, this is the many. That is formless, this is form. That is outside time and space. This world is in time and space. Okay? So all complete contradiction in every way. That is featureless. No features at all. This is all the world of features. Color, shape, form, size, weight, everything. So in every way they are opposite. So one who experiences only one aspect, he will see the contradiction. But Srimad is saying you have to see all of them together. Okay? So, for taken by itself, the existence of the Absolute, the Supreme Brahman, would be a contradiction of the relative universe, and our own real existence would be incompatible with its sole incommunicable reality. The highest is incommunicable. It can be unspeakable if you want, okay? Cannot be thought of, cannot be spoken of, because it is featureless. Okay? That would be the contradiction of the physical world. So, incompatible with its sole incommunicable reality. But the Brahman is at the same time omnipresent in all relativities. So this is a Srimdo's statement. He's saying, but don't think that the physical world is the opposite of the divine. He is there hiding behind the form. It is very much like an actor who is on the stage, and sometimes it is possible for him to forget the next line that he has to say. So there is the prompter in the wings and he whispers it. The audience does not know, but he comes to know and he carries on as though. So there is a guidance from behind. Behind the form, there is the guidance which is there always. That's what Srimad is saying. It would be a condenser. But the Brahman is at the same time omnipresent in all relativities. Relativities is forms with features. Relativities. Okay? It's the absolute independent of all relative. It is also an absolute independent of all relatives. That's the highest level. The absolute basing all realities, the absolute governing, pervading, constituting all realities. Okay, so he is using different words again here. What he means is, independent of all realities is the highest level. He has called it absolute, he has called it transcendence. Okay, and the next is the absolute basing all realities is a cosmic. Okay, yeah, basing all relatives. So this is the cosmic. Then the absolute governing and pervading, this is the individual, constituting all relatives. There is nothing that is not the omnipresent reality. So all the three levels, everything is the omnipresent reality. In observing the triple aspect and the triple power, we come to see how this is possible. So you have to see, experience all the three. So, we can go to the next one. Huh? So, usually, in spiritual experience, you have only one aspect of that. Either you have the relative aspect, or you have the absolute aspect, you have the personal aspect, or you have the impersonal aspect, saguna, nirguna, or you may experience the the dynamic, the static. Okay, so these are all the different words they use for telling you that only one aspect of the divine you are experiencing, but it is so convincing that you feel that it's the absolute. So, we read the next para. If we look at this picture of the self-existence and its works as a unitary, unlimited whole of vision, it stands together and imposes itself by its convincing totality. But to the analysis of the logical intellect, it offers an abundance of difficulties, such as all attempts to erect a logical system out of a perception of an illimitable existence must necessarily create, for any such endeavor must either effect consistency by an arbitrary sectioning of the complex truth of things, or else by its comprehensiveness become logically untenable. For we see that the indeterminable determines itself as infinite and finite. The immutable admits a constant mutability and endless differences. The one becomes an innumerable multitude. The impersonal creates or supports personality, is itself a person. The self has a nature and is yet other than its nature. Being turns into becoming, and yet it is always itself and other than its becomings. The universe individualizes itself, and the individual universalizes himself. Brahman is at once void of qualities and capable of infinite qualities. Void of qualities, nirguna, the Brahman consciousness. Capable of infinite qualities, the personal aspect. Okay, Purusha. The Lord and doer of works, that's the Purushottama or the Ishvara. So all these are possible. Yet, a non-doer and silent witness of the workings of nature. So he can be a doer of actions, and yet he can be a non-doer of actions. That's a silent witness, the workings of nature. So all these are possible. When you go from one level to another level, what you see goes on changing. This is something that even science says, and that's the interesting part. So, the theory of relativity says that the way you are looking at something is determined by the framework in which you are located. Okay? We can give many examples. Very, very easy examples are there. I think we have discussed it before, but just briefly touching it. If I keep one single line, okay, or a rod or a wire at my eye level and I don't move, I see only a point. I can see only a point. But if I go up, I see a line. How is it that I see two different things when I change my position? But that's exactly it. It can be even more striking if you take the image of the railway. Okay, someone sitting in the train is throwing a ball. Okay, playing with a ball. The train is moving at a certain speed. Okay, and for him the movement of the ball is vertical. It's going up and down. But for someone who is standing on the platform, he will not see it as a vertical action at all. He'll see it this way, because the train is moving. So he'll see it this way. So the same thing can be seen in two different ways. That is the truth of spiritual experience. That depending at which level of consciousness you are, you will see certain things valid and relevant to that level and nothing else. You change your position, again you will see something else. Okay, that's what he's saying. Doer of works, yet a non-doer, and a silent witness of the workings of nature. If we look carefully at these workings of nature, once we put aside the veil of familiarity and our unthinking acquiescence in the process of things as natural, because so they always happen, we discover that all she does in whole or in parts is a miracle, an act of some incomprehensible magic. The being of the self-existence and the world that has appeared in it are, each of them and both together, a supra-rational mystery. There seems to us to be a reason in things because the processes of the physical finite are consistent to our view and their law determinable. But this reason in things, when closely examined, seems to stumble at every moment because the irrational or infra-rational and the supra-rational, the consistency, the determinability of process seems to lessen rather than increase as we pass from matter to life and from life to mentality. If the finite consents to some extent to look as if it were rational, the infinitesimal refuses to be bound by the same laws, and the infinite is unseizable. What he's saying applies absolutely to science also. We'll have a discussion on that. As for the action of the universe and its significance, it escapes us altogether. The action of the universe and its significance escapes us altogether. If self, God or spirit be there, his dealings with the world and us are incomprehensible, offer no clue that we can follow. God and nature and even ourselves move in a mysterious way which is only partially and at points intelligible, but as a whole escapes our comprehension. All the works of Maya look like the production of a supra-rational magical power which arranges things according to its wisdom or its fantasy, but a wisdom which is not ours and a fantasy which baffles our imagination. The spirit that manifests things or manifests itself in them so obscurely looks to our reason like a magician, and his power or Maya a creative magic. But magic can create illusions or it can create astounding realities, and we find it difficult to decide which of these suprarational processes faces us in the universe. So, it's all a big mystery, and we can give so many examples, and then we see that it's impossible to understand. He himself gives many examples afterwards, okay? So, but he's talking of laws and that which is at each level. I'll give you only one instance which shows you how what you think is reasonable and law, okay? The law goes on changing depending at which level you are. If we are at our normal level on the surface of the earth, okay, we are pulled by gravity. Very clear? No problem. The law is absolute. Everybody is subject to the law of gravity. But of course, a yogi can levitate. Okay, that's a different matter. Because he is changing the laws. Okay. Then, when you go 100 miles up into space, no gravity. Law has changed. So when you are up there, even physically in another level, in the same world, the law has changed. Also, when you go down into the near zero temperature, the absolute zero is minus 272 or 273 or something like that. Gravitation disappears there also. Things float. When you reduce the temperature of something, okay, and take it down to almost zero, gravitation disappears for that particular thing. This is what I'm saying. Everything looks like a miracle when you think about it. Okay. He will give examples himself, but we can anticipate a little bit. So we can just anticipate a little bit what he's saying. I'll give you examples of the laws changing at different levels in the same world. When you are in a different world, laws altogether change. Okay. So, oxygen and hydrogen, two gases combining produce water. How? What is it? How does it become like that? We don't know. Or something even more surprising, each element has a fixed number of electrons moving around the nucleus. No? Change the number of electrons, the nature of the metal changes. So how can that be? So this is the interesting part, it's magic. So if you change that, in fact here only, in this chapter only, he will tell you later on, that if you know the secret, Gold can be made into silver and can be made into lead. Theoretically, that's possible because you know how to do it. Okay.
And he has that very cogent statement in Savitri. All's miracle here and can by miracle change.
Yes, that's right.
And we see that here.
That's right. If we look at this picture of the self-existence and it works as a unitary, unlimited whole of vision. Okay? So, when you are experiencing Brahman consciousness, it is limited and it's not unitary. It's not the whole thing, it's only one. When you are looking at the Purusha aspect, it's not unitary and it's not whole, it is limited. But if you look at all the three together, what he means by unitary, unlimited whole of vision, it stands together and imposes itself by its convincing totality. Clear? You should not experience only one aspect. And when can you experience all the aspects together? When you go to the highest level. That's why Sri Aurobindo insistence always on the supermind. Because that gives you the total reality. The rest is all giving you partial realities, if you want. Okay, so by its convincing totality. But to the analysis of the logical intellect, it offers an abundance of difficulties because the logical intellect is always limited and it's not unitary. It is multiple. It sees multiplicity. So it's not a Unitarian consciousness at all. Normal logical mind. Okay. Such as all attempts to erect a logical system out of a perception of an illimitable existence must necessarily create. When you create a logical system, it is consistent within itself. Okay? So, but you can, all mathematics is built on that basis. You start with a theorem. You start with a hypothesis. And then you can build a logical system, which does not contradict itself. But if you start with a opposite hypothesis, you can again build another logical system. The two may not match. And the funny part is that both have got application in the universe. When you go and see phenomena in the universe, both have got an application there. So logic is something very limited. It's not something absolute. That's what Swami is saying. Such as all attempts to erect a logical system out of a perception of an illimitable existence must necessarily create. For any such endeavor must either effect consistency by an arbitrary sectioning of the complex truth of things, or else by its comprehensiveness become logically untenable. What he means is, for the logic, one and the many cannot exist together. How can they? They are opposites. Black and white cannot exist together. They are opposites. Okay? Under the same circumstances, hot and cold cannot exist. They are opposites. That's what he's saying. So, if you are in the logical mind, these spiritual experiences are all not valid. The divine is infinite. The divine is finite. The divine is formless. He is also form. Not possible. That's what he's saying. So
logically untenable.
Huh?
Logically untenable.
Yeah, logically untenable. That's right. So, for we see that the indeterminable determines itself as infinite and finite. That's what he's saying. So, the infinite determines itself as finite. Even in the material world, you can see that. Matter is infinite. It's limited, this form, but it's infinite. It's creating all sorts of different forms. Okay, finite forms. Trees, animals, living creatures, this, that, whatnot, it's creating. So, the indeterminable is, another word for the indeterminable is the featureless. That which has no features at all. It cannot be determined, its character cannot be determined. Okay? Determines itself as infinite and finite. The immutable, the static, the non-moving, admits a constant mutability and endless differences. The one becomes an innumerable multitude. The impersonal creates or supports personality is itself a person. The self has a nature and is yet other than its nature. Being turns into becoming. So, an example of this we can also think of the water behind the dam. This is not my image, it is Sri Aurobindo image. The water behind the dam is one, static. But it creates movement. When you let the water out, it creates movement. So it is being and becoming, both. It is static and dynamic. It can become dynamic also. They are quite consistent with each other. So, the impersonal creates or supports personality is itself a person. The self has a nature and is yet other than its nature. Being turns into becoming, and yet it is always itself and other than its becomings. The universal individualizes itself, and the individual universalizes himself. Now that's interesting. Sri Aurobindo says that the transcendent, the supreme divine, creates a universe. And it's the universe that creates the individual. So, he uses the words, the individual is a microcosm and the universe is the macrocosm. So, whatever is there in the universe is condensed into the human being. We have, in the universe, at the lowest level, we have matter. The human being has a body corresponding to matter. At the highest level, there is the divine. So the divine is also there in you as a psychic being. So everything that is there in the universe is condensed into the individual. So you are a microcosm of the macrocosm, of the transcendent. So that's the reason why you can have a cosmic consciousness. And that's what happens. Not your body, but your consciousness can become universal. It can cosmicize itself. Note interestingly how, one example to make it very clear, when mother was coming from Sri Lanka in the boat and she could sense several miles outside in the sea, she could feel Sri Aurobido's presence. So he has universalized his consciousness and it has gone that far. And everything in that consciousness he experiences as his own. The one becomes innumerable multitude. The impersonal creates or supports personality is itself a person. The self has a nature and is yet other than its nature. Being turns into becoming, and yet it is always itself and other than its becomings. All this is untenable in logic. The universal individualizes himself and the individual universalizes himself. Brahman is at once void of qualities, the featureless, which is the nirguna, and capable of infinite qualities. He can become the saguna. The Lord and doer of works. This is the highest level. The Lord and doer of works is the Ishvara consciousness. Yet a non-doer and a silent witness, which is the Brahman consciousness. He can be the doer of works and yet he can be the non-doer of works also. So, you can only be a witness consciousness, the Purusha aspect. If we look carefully at these workings of nature, once we put aside the veil of familiarity and our unthinking acquiescence in the process of things as natural, because so they always happen, we discover that all she does in whole or in parts is a miracle, an act of some incomprehensible magic. The being of the self-existence and the world that has appeared in it are, each of them and both together, a supra-rational mystery. There seems to us to be a reason in things because the processes of the physical finite are consistent to our view and their law determinable. There seems to be a law, a process, but that process doesn't seem to be there in the divine workings. Okay. physical finite are consistent of it and their law determinable. But this reason in things, when closely examined, seems to stumble at every moment against the irrational or infra-rational and the supra-rational. Okay? So, the irrational, that which is not logical, or infra-rational, below the level, and the supra-rational. Okay? So, the infra-rational is the animal, the rational is man, and the supra-rational is the yogi or the divine, if you want. Okay? And man can be also irrational. Contradicts reason. That's irrational. So, the consistency, the determinability of process seems to lessen rather than increase as we pass from matter to life and from life to mentality. Let's see what he's saying here. He's saying the determinability of process seems to lessen rather than increase as we pass from matter to life and from life to mentality. Very clear what he's saying. He's saying the laws that operate, the fixity of laws that operate in the physical world, the fixity becomes less and less as you keep going up. In other words, that which is concrete and fixed becomes unfixed and more subtle and more free. This sentence will give you the understanding of the law of determinability and fate. As you rise in consciousness, the fixity of fate goes on changing. It disappears. Until finally you go into a place where there is no determination for you. You're completely free. The law of causality, the law of karma does not affect you when you are rising in consciousness and going to the spiritual level of consciousness. Because it becomes more and more subtle, and finally there is no law at all. Even in the physical world it happens. There is gravitation here pulling you down. You go 100 miles up, you are free. No gravitation. So people ask, if you are at the physical level, there is no freedom. That's sure. Your body, your mind and your life are being operated by universal nature like a puppet. So you feel that you have a freedom, but you have actually no freedom. Go to the spiritual planes of consciousness, yes, you are free. Okay, so this sentence is clear. The determinability of process. That means to understand the process, its fixity. The determinability, the fixity of process seems to lessen rather than increase as we pass from matter to life. You're going up, and from life to mind. And from mind, if you go to the spiritual planes of consciousness, law of causality and determinability of process disappears. You become free. Okay? If the finite consents to some extent to look as if it were rational, the infinitesimal refuses to be bound by the same laws, and the infinite is unseizable. That's exactly what we discussed just now. At the atomic level, the laws are different. At our level, the laws are different. And above, again, the laws are different. Even temperature-wise also, they are different. So, as for the action of the universe and its significance, it escapes us altogether. We can't understand. If self, God or spirit there be, his dealings with the world and us are incomprehensible, offer no clue that we can follow. God and nature and even ourselves move in a mysterious way which is only partially and at points intelligible, but as a whole escapes our comprehension. All the works of Maya look like the production of a supra-rational magical power. That's why the Maya, which is the original meaning of the word Maya, is to create forms, real forms. But when it comes down, it seems to be magic and illusion. The Maya has three meanings: the power to create forms, and the lower level, it becomes the power to create illusions. And the third meaning of Maya is the world itself is Maya. It's an illusion. So, it depends. That's how it is used in Indian languages. Maya, it's a magic. Okay. All the works of Maya look like the production of a suprarational, magical power which arranges things according to its wisdom or its fantasy. This is the image that Shankara also uses. He says that when you experience the Nirvana consciousness, okay, it seems to be a mystery. The world is Maya. But if you go to the higher level of consciousness and you see the Lord doing the work, then he looks like a magician. That's what he uses in his philosophy. So, Srimad is saying the same thing in different words. So, all the works of Maya look like the production of a suprarational magical power which arranges things according to its wisdom or its fantasy, depending on how you are looking at it. But a wisdom which is not ours and a fantasy which baffles our imagination. The spirit that manifests things or manifests itself in them so obscurely looks to our reason like a magician, and his power or Maya a creative magic. But magic can create illusions or it can create astounding realities. And we find it difficult to decide which of these suprarational processes faces us in the universe. So this is the problem also that Sri Aurobindo faced until he experienced the supermind. That gave the solution to everything. So,
Thank you, Ram.
yeah, we stop here.
Namaste. Om.